in New York, you might get mugged, or they'll say "F you" or whatever. But in Los Angeles, it's kind of like they want to sacrifice you. Why are the big realms of good and evil, and they exist? They're as real as we are. Why are these realms slugging it out for the souls, the hearts and souls of mankind? Why?
The resurrection is the one that is the most difficult for people to swallow.
Yes.
That's the one that requires the most faith.
The most faith and the most belief, resurrection.
Yeah.
Who gets back up 3 days later after he gets murdered in public? Who gets back up under his own power? Buddha didn't do that. You're presented with a lot of things and a lot of new games to play and a lot of people and money, and there's a lot of weird power games, and there's the studios over in California. I think society is kind of devolving somehow.
Mel Gibson is a generational household name, probably the most influential figure we've ever covered here on Make Faith Famous. He's credited in over 70 acting roles, over 20 producer roles, and has directed 12 movies. I mean, these are unreal numbers. Lethal Weapon, Braveheart, Mad Max, The Passion of the Christ, take your pick. He even produced The Sound of Freedom, which admittedly I haven't seen yet. But did you know that Mel has grown over the years into a man of deep faith? He also has a track record of absolutely dunking on the Hollywood elite rather than simply falling in line with them. In this video, we dive deep into the heart, mind, and soul of Mel Gibson, and I'm so glad you're here, so let's get into it. First up, Mel talks to Joe Rogan about his controversial Christian epic, The Passion of the Christ.
It seemed like there was resistance to that movie.
Oh yeah, no, there was,
which I thought was very strange. There was like Hollywood resistance to that movie. Like people didn't like that you were making it. It seemed like.
Yeah, there was a lot of opposition to it, and I don't know. I think if you ever hit on that subject matter, you're gonna get people going, because
of course
it's big subject matter, and it's like And my contention is, when I was making it, it was like, you're making this film, and the idea was that we're all responsible for this, that his sacrifice was for all mankind, and that for all our ills and all the things in our fallen nature, it was a redemption. So, and I believe that, I actually am. I was born into a Catholic family. I'm very Christian in my beliefs, So I do actually believe this stuff to the full. So depicting that was an honor, but it was also, you got the daylights beat out of you for it.
Yeah, because there's resistance, first of all, from secular Hollywood, where for whatever reason, Christianity is the one religion that you're allowed to disparage.
Yeah.
Christianity is the one religion where people... all these progressive, open-minded, leftist people, they'll embrace all these different religions until it comes to Christianity. And for whatever reason, that represents like white male, whatever it represents, colonialism, whatever it represents, it's negative.
Yeah, sure, it's gotten a bad rap. And people do feel free to beat up on it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I regard the Gospels as history. It's verifiable history. Some people say, "Oh, it's a fairy tale. He never existed, but he did." And there are other accounts, verifiable historical accounts outside the biblical ones, that also bear this up. That yes, he did exist. And the other aspect of that is that all the evangelists, the apostles who went out there. Every single one of those guys died rather than deny their belief. And nobody dies for a lie. Nobody.
Right. Yeah. Well, the resurrection is the one that is the most difficult for people to swallow.
Yes.
That's the one that requires the most faith.
The most faith and the most belief. Yeah, resurrection.
Yeah.
Who gets back up 3 days later after he gets murdered in public? Who gets back up under his own power? Buddha didn't do that.
Right.
So.
You believe that was a real event?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
What brought you to that belief? Is this something that you've always had, or is it something you studied it and you've come to this conclusion because of the historical accounts? And
yes. I think as a child, one accepts things on faith because, you're raised by people who are nice to you and they believe it. So as a child, you learn these things and you accept them on faith. And I still have that faith, but as I got older, I came to it through intellect and through reading and putting things together in accounts, and then occurrences like in my own life. I mean, I don't think it's any secret. I am flawed in the fact that I am by nature born an alcoholic, right? I did drugs, I did alcohol, so and there was nothing that could stop me from doing that. Nothing. So I was really kind of you're on a downhill run. So I regard the fact that I was able to appeal to something greater than myself to help me and actually stop me doing that. I think that's a miracle. It is. For me, it is. And for many. And we're allowed to make mistakes. And we do. We are so flawed. And I'm more flawed than anyone, But it's something that I think, and it's pretty safe to say I'm in the third act now. You're in act 2, right? Gesundheit. But I'm in the third act, man. So you have to think about the other side. You have to think about what comes next. Is there a next? Yes, there is. I believe there is. And I think it's depends on how you live now. And the beauty of believing is that even for your transgressions, you can be forgiven and you can be redeemed.
What a beautiful way to describe the gospel. And I just checked, and the original video on the Joe Rogan podcast has 10 million freaking views, which is absolutely absurd. But what it means is that Mel here sort of gave his testimony and a condensed version of the gospel in no uncertain terms to some millions of people all over the world. And I think that's just so incredibly special. And speaking of special, it immediately makes me think of all of you out there still watching. Makes me think of this whole community, this whole new movement that God's blessed us to launch. And so thank you who are still here with me watching the video. I greatly, greatly appreciate it. Feel free to show us some love in the comments. And also, if you haven't picked up one of our awesome Make Faith Famous hats yet, please consider scrolling underneath this video and picking out your favorite style and repping the movement. All right, up next, let's get a bit conspiratorial, or maybe it's just plain facts, on times I found where Mel's truly calling out weird experiences he's had in Hollywood. And honestly, as such a big actor and director, who's better qualified to speak on this stuff than him, right? Let's hear what he has to say.
There was Sigourney Weaver and a really nice actor called Michael Murphy. Los Angeles, he says, how should I put this? He says, in New York, you might get mugged or, they'll say F you or, whatever. But in Los Angeles, it's kind of like they want to sacrifice you. And I said, whoa, it sort of blew my mind that he said that. I said, what do you mean? He said,
dark, but it's true.
He said, you'll find out if you go there. I'm like, what? It's like such a weird kind of,
I'll be in Central Park, please.
Yeah. And he said it, and he laughed about it when he said, they kind of want to sacrifice you. And I had this notion that he had been there and had been on the chopping block or, I don't know. It was a weird kind of thing.
When I came over here, I was in my mid-20s.
Right.
The first time I really came over here. I had a whole bunch of weird paranoid suspicions about what the hell was going on because there was a lot of stuff I couldn't understand.
Right.
And nobody was really bothering to explain it to me.
They don't.
And and I formed a bunch of opinions about the town.
If it's not clear here, he's talking about LA, Hollywood.
And about the people in it that were like, surely that couldn't be, because a whole place can't be like, Weird Town, where the stranger wanders in and all the people are in the bar and they all shut up when he looks at them and they tell you don't go into the house on the hill, and it's like that. And then you go away and you think, no, I was wrong. I mean, that's insane thinking. I'm paranoid. I imagined that stuff. That couldn't be the reason for why so-and-so was acting like, could it? And then you find out later on the track that you are exactly on track with a lot of this stuff. Not specifically on track, but that you could, that some of your worst nightmares were real. at the time, and you think,
You took a couple of years off, which I guess, was that because you didn't want to burn out, or was it because you had something that you wanted to do for a couple of years?
Yeah, well, you get to the place, you're in your 20s, and you're presented with a lot of things and a lot of new games to play and a lot of people and money, and there's a lot of weird power games, and there's the studios over in California and all this kind of stuff, and it gets to be a little bit overwhelming while you try and figure out, firstly, who you are, because, you know, in your 20s, you don't really have a sense of yourself yet. And then try and figure out what the game is. So I felt I needed to take a breather because I was a little overwhelmed by the whole thing. It was, this tide was carrying me, and I wasn't in control of it. It was controlling me. So I just stopped. I bought a farm, and I grew organic vegetables, and I raised cattle, and I milked a cow, and the whole thing, you know. And that lasted about a year and a half, and I thought, this is not a great business, and it's breaking my back. So
Mel's been consistently exposing the Hollywood agenda and the Hollywood elite for years, and it's so interesting and unfortunately so sad that it seems like he learned a lot about the dark side of Hollywood in his 20s, to the point where he actually left it entirely for a while to live an unplugged rural life. But obviously, he did eventually return and go on to direct epic films like The Passion. Mel really is the real deal, right? He's very clearly seen it all in Hollywood, and it's a huge blessing that Mel's been able to overcome very public obstacles and become a major symbol of Christian faith in recent years. And next up, we have some examples of just that. I want to get a bit biblical here, so we'll hear Mel talk a bit about things like prayer and Bible verses that have impacted him personally. Let's hear it.
Hey, look. God gives, God takes. We come in with nothing. That's the same way we go out, you know. And here's the deal. You'll always be okay if you seek first the kingdom of God. You'll always be okay. You'll get what you need. Look at the flowers of the field. Look at the birds of the air. They get fed. They get clothed. I mean, it's Matthew, I think. But that was one of my dad's favorite passages. He said, stop worrying about stuff, about money, about stuff. So, you know, that's, I think he put that in my head when I was very young, and it stayed, and I believe it, you know.
Yeah. So. What do you do every day that is beneficial to you?
Man, I get up every day and I realize I'm not in control of this whole thing. And no matter what happens, I just ask for the grace to be able to deal with it, you know, and to deal with it well and to accept it. That's the other thing. It's being able to accept stuff. And it's like, you know, how do you get meaning out of this existence, and what's it all about? So it's a search in that direction. And I think the search, you might never get to the end of it, but I think the very act of searching yields some kind of good fruit.
Is it prayer? Is it meditation? Is it exercise? You remain in tremendous shape.
Well, all those things are in play. I would say prayer, meditation, exercise, you know, and introspection and self investigation, so that you're, you know, make sure that you don't get out of line too much. It's a high wire act.
One last question. What is your favorite Bible verse?
I don't have a favorite. I mean, there's too many good ones.
Beautiful.
And they're hard to, you know, they all mean something different. I mean, it's great. From the Old Testament and the New Testament. I mean, how could you possibly pick one?
Ultimately, Mel Gibson is an intriguing, complex, larger-than-life figure who I'm glad is on Jesus' side, as he has a level of influence that simply not many people will ever have. I'm looking forward to the next Passion movie. I look forward to seeing Mel grow even more in his faith and inspiring generations in theirs, and I look forward to seeing you next time on Make Faith Famous. God bless you.
Why are the big realms of good and evil, and they exist. They're as real as we are. Why are these realms slugging it out for the souls, the hearts and souls of mankind? Why are we the meat in that sandwich? Little old us, flawed us, imperfect us. Why is that about us? And I'm trying to answer that question. I don't know if I can. I've attempted, and maybe with God's help and with image and with sound and music, we can deliver on some answers to some of those massive questions, these existential questions.